This is my Syngonium steyermarkii. It is on a 2-meter tall moss pole that is made out of 3 segments, and it just reached the top of the 3rd segment. Now it's getting a little bit top heavy, a little bit too tall. It's looking a little empty over here. So today we're definitely giving it an extension, but we're also going to try something different. Instead of just vertically extending the poles, I actually want to horizontally stitch a few poles together to create one really big lush display of this beautiful Syngonium. And of course I'm going to take you along. Hey everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. By far my favorite Syngonium. This is Syngonium steyermarkii, and it has finally grown so well. Let me bring this a bit closer to you so you can actually see these mature leaves at the top. I absolutely love these mature leaves at the top over here. It looks nothing like a Syngonium, right? And I think that's kind of exactly why I like it. Now the problem with having all of this beautiful growth at the top over there is that, well, first of all, I'll show you where it's positioned as well. It is growing out in my garden on my wall of aeroids, and it's kind of being swallowed by the tree above. So I can't even really see the growth at the top. I was actually shocked when I just took it out of there because it was kind of like inside the tree. So that's obviously not ideal. I want to see this beautiful growth. The second thing is, as soon as it's so high up, it doesn't really show how big they are. It is much nicer to have these big leaves kind of on eye height, so we can really appreciate them. Also, there's 2 plants on here. You can see that the second plant is only reached till about here at this stage, but it's also looking really nice and lush. Now all of the leaves are at the bottom over here are pointing towards you, because when I back this up against the fence is covering the back over here, shading it, so it gets all of its light from the front, which creates this beautiful nice display site, which I really love. At the top, it actually exceeds the fence, so it gets a lot of afternoon sun coming in from behind, hence these leaves pointing in all directions. Imagine they would all point forward. Oh, it would look so good, right? So I want to bring the top down, not just because it's just outgrown and exceeding the pole and kind of growing into the tree, but also so that I can use the fence to position the leaves quite nicely, or so that the shade that the fence provides will cause the leaves to face in one direction. The other thing I wanted to change here before I start chopping it up is the change in growth pattern. Let's have a look at this. And let's ignore the bottom plant over here. Let's look at this main shoot. See this really large internodal spacing? Yep, that's when it grew indoors. As soon as I popped it outside in spring, oh, can you see this? How am I supposed to show you this? As soon as I popped it outside in spring, did you see how tiny the internodal spacing grew? So obviously that also means way more leaves on any given pole, making the pole so much lusher. So it's a great candidate for growing outdoors, and I'm also determined to leave it outdoors year round. I can't fit this back into my house now, it's too large. But that's okay, the Botanic Gardens has one of those and they grow it outdoors year round, so I'm confident it can actually survive. And given I put it out in spring, it would have had all of spring, summer and then autumn to build resilience before winter actually hits us. In preparation for the extension today, I chopped the stem twice already. Once here, that's where the first 2 poles interlap, and once, I chopped it another time, didn't I? Once down here. Here. I have not chopped this second shoot. Actually, are there 3 shoots on here? Yeah, there's 3 shoots on there. There's also this one. I don't know. Honestly, I'm not too sure exactly what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do all of this. I've never done this before, but that's why I want to take you along and just see how we go, I suppose. Jan from the future over here delivering a little spoiler alert. It worked. 3.5 months after the big chop, the plant is looking nicer and lusher than ever. But of course, we want to know how we got in here in the first place, and you're about to see a pretty chaotic repot and chop and so on. I don't know what happened that day, but I was so chaotic that day. Anyway, it all worked out in the end. The reason I jumped on here real quick is because I wanted to ask you for a favor. Can you please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, click on the bell so you get a notification every time I upload. Watching and engaging with my content is by far the best way for you guys to support me. It costs you nothing, but it absolutely means the world to me and the future of this channel. Thank you in advance, but now let's take it back to 3.5 months ago when I started this process. What I definitely know is I need to take this top cutting off because it is just getting way too top heavy and I kind of have to hold on to it for the sake of this video. So let's just take the top pole off. That one is easy, there's only one cutting on here and I always overlap my grow verticals by 2. So I'm just going to chop off the top 2 cable ties. Now of course this could also be connected by more than just the cable ties, like roots for example. So let me show you what I do here in a sec. Now with the next step I'll try my best, but I know it's not always guaranteed. See this root that comes from here, that goes from the top pole into the bottom pole and then continues growing. I'm gonna try and free this root. Oh well, I already ripped it, oopsie. But I'll try and free as much of the root as possible to keep it with the top part, because I want the top part to have as many roots as possible so it has the least setback, if that makes sense. Same applies to this root over here. Sometimes you can't really help but just pull on it. Again, rather save this little bit of root than no root at all. This can go back into the pot and then start sending out some secondary roots. Actually, this entire node is actually on the wrong pole. I didn't see this, didn't really consider that, so I just need to rip this. See all of these roots, they're in here, but the roots belong to the wrong pole, huh? But I want to keep them. Come on. Oh well, that was stupid. I actually just snapped the entire node off anyway. Oh well, here's a propagation. The reason I didn't want to do that now is because now I have another cut here that I need to callus over before I can work with it, but that's okay. I do, however, want to give it a clean cut, and this is also a little bit too close to the node for my liking, but oh well, things go wrong, right? Okay, now over here there are definitely roots connecting these poles, so I just need to cut through them. See, there were some roots right here that I had to cut through, but that's all right. I don't know if you can see this because it's not clear, but you should see some sort of dark things pushing up against the back. Those are roots. Alrighty, now let's have a look at this top, now that we can finally see it. Look how much nicer it looks now on eye height over here. Much more, we can appreciate the plant much more. Actually, we will see the roots. I will get rid of the plastic backing in a sec, so don't worry, we'll get to see it all today. For now, I just want to turn it into 3 segments. And this one I don't need to let it dry out because this part is already dried out. I will just propagate this in water and then I have another cutting. Why not? Let's assess this bottom part over here. So the poles meet over here. I feel like I really messed up when I made the cuts in preparation for this. I don't think I thought this through at all. I made the wrong cuts, I think, again. Anyway, I had good intentions, huh? But here again you can see a really clear difference between growing indoors, super skinny, super leggy stem, and then over here much thicker stem, much shorter internodal spacing, and nice looking leaves that correspond with that. I suppose there's a few ugly ones at the bottom probably, but we can cut those off in a sec. Let's not get too distracted, Jan. One thing at a time, okay? I also don't know if I might have cable tied these together. No. Okay, I just need to cut through the entire pole in the back. Sorry roots, I'll show that to you in a sec. Oh my god, ants! Oh my god, so many ants. See the ants? But you see all of the roots I had to cut through. Let me quickly put this outside and hose it down. That is not ideal. I really didn't want there to be ants. I also really didn't want to make this wet because that's going to make everything so messy. But yeah, look, it's an outdoor plant. I grow this plant in nature, so I can't complain about nature inviting itself. I'm not concerned, and I'm also not going to do anything about it for the sake of the plant. Like, I don't think they're going to be harmful. Or, well, I mean, the plant is thriving. If it was unhappy with that little ant colony living there, it could have told me. I just don't necessarily want to have them crawl everywhere while I repot. So if the watering didn't get rid of them, I will probably have to move everything outside and perform the rest of the stitch up, whatever we want to call it, outdoors. But it is boiling hot and humid out there. It is absolutely uncomfortable, so I was really trying to avoid it where I can. I mean, it is not uncomfortable. It's not uncomfortable for the plants. It's actually quite nice. If I would go for like a little walk or go to the beach, it's beautiful weather. But not to work, and not to, especially not to work while having to wear clothes. And you guys would overheat. Anyway, I'm just removing the mesh over here of that first pole. Alrighty, let's have a look. The moment of truth. Oh, you get to see it first. Oh, nice! Given that this is the newest part of the pole, so the least time to root into it, I'm quite happy with that. Alrighty, I'm just gonna leave this here. This one I can reuse eventually. I'm just gonna leave this here for now, and I'm gonna do the exact same thing with the other two poles, but I'll do it outside because of the ants, and then I'll see you soon. I made it, and I think the ants all disappeared when they saw my face because they're mainly gone. Alrighty, let me show you what I've done. That's the second pole, so the one that was in the middle. Very, very nice chunky roots everywhere over here. Oh, there's one last ant. There's a few of them. And this is the bottom part with the least leaves, but the most roots. I also just took it out of the pot. Look at the amount of roots in here. They were all funneled by the pole into the pot. Lots and lots of beautiful roots though, so I think this should have no issues reshooting, but it doesn't look that super lush at the moment, but that's not a problem because the other ones do. This is the part that I've never done before. The idea is that I'm putting 3 poles next to each other and then I extend them all together. I honestly don't. The fact that they're all wet and heavy and full of ants now is making this so much harder than it has to be. Okay, the ants are coming back. Let me put the bottom part back outside for a minute. Don't need all 3 of them yet. So these are obviously the 2 pretty parts, let's say, right? So these 2 I would like to stitch next to each other, because this one's also more like top heavy, this one is a little bit more bottom heavy, so I think overall they're gonna balance each out quite nicely. Maybe I'll just have to do 2. I was first thinking maybe I could remove a little bit of the actual mesh to not make it so big, but because they're so thoroughly rooted, I don't actually think I can. I'm gonna try and overlap it by 1, just to make it a little bit smaller. Okay, I'm just gonna zip tie this. Sorry guys, I just have to concentrate for a moment, but this is also not the most thrilling part. Sweet. Alright, that worked, and this is what the back looks like. Yeah. But I think I have to give up on adding the third one. I could actually add the third one in the back and then kind of make a round pole, but I want to plastic back this one. So I should have never removed the backing from the third one. I think I'll put the backing on the third one again, and then I'll grow that one separately. I want to remove one line of mesh on either side, just to make it a little more narrow so that the pole can be a little bit deeper. So the deeper pole can hold more substrate and hence isn't going to dry out so quickly. Okay, got one row on this side and a row on the other side. Honestly, I think if it wasn't for the ants, this would be fine. I've been so itchy since I discovered the ants. I want to take some moss out of this end because that's going to be the end that will be in the pot in the end. So I'm going to replace that with an aeroid mix, and at the same time I'm also just repurposing a bit of moss because there will be gaps in this pole that I want to top up. Now let's go systematic about this, and let's hopefully not ruin too much of this existing growth. So I'm going to put this on the backing over here, and I'm going to work on one side first, connecting. So the backing is just plastic with pre-drilled holes. They're from Grow Vertical. I always use those ones. They're always linked in the description, and I do have a discount code for them as well. Let me start connecting one side of the newly stitched together mesh and connect it to the backing. And then I'll check in with you. Alrighty, done. So this side is now connected to the mesh. Now, before I connect the other side, I want to put moss in here, right? So that I fill up this gap as well. Just in general, like a skinny layer, because it's obviously quite root bound already, right? So just a skinny layer everywhere, and specifically a little bit extra in the middle. This is actually all moss that I reused from previous poles as well. Give it room for more roots. Is this gonna work? Perfect. Alrighty. You guys are actually overheating even though we're inside, so it's definitely a hot day today in Sydney. So let me quickly do all of these cable ties and I'll give you a moment to cool down, and I'll see you soon. Ta-da! Here we are. Alrighty, so it's all good. Oopsie. Looks like I incorporated a little cable tie here, but you can see there's a new layer of moss at the back so the roots can expand a little bit further. And obviously there's also much more pole to go to the top. So I also got to extend this now, but I think it's a smart idea to pot it up first so it has stability. Let's see if a 25 centimeter pot is sufficient for this. I bloody think so. So let's get my aeroid mix. As always, and it's always linked in the description, the most recent iteration, I'm really loving the tree fern fiber. So it's quite tree fern fiber heavy. Fill up the bottom bit, you know where I took the moss out earlier, with a bit of aeroid mix. Today is chaos. And now I'll top it up, and I still don't have a pot, so I'll just do this with my hand. Maybe I'll do it in here, less mess. Always make sure that the pole goes all the way to the bottom of the pot, so that way it is nice and stable. These big pots take so much substrate, holy moly. Lucky I made a huge bucket. I do put a little bit in the back and compress it over here. That just gives the whole thing stability. Plus, I'm not worried about compressing root growth over there. It's just a plastic backing anyway. But at the front, I will not do that. At the front, I will just shake it a bit and level it, but not compress it. Alrighty, here we go. Easy peasy. Okay, so we're getting a new mesh. The Grow Vertical comes with the mesh and then the plastic backing, but obviously I repurposed the existing mesh. Now, the reason I earlier chopped off one line of mesh on each side is so that the old mesh now matches the new mesh. Or like almost. Oh no, this is not gonna end up well, is it? First things first, let's cut this to size. Alrighty, so basically putting the two meshes together and cutting off one on either side and overlapping it is now making it pretty much in line with this mesh over here. So there isn't all too much of a difference. Now I know this is not a huge extension for now, but I also just stripped a whole lot of root system off of this plant, so I'm not expecting it to immediately shoot the lights out. Plus, you saw how short the internodal spacing was with maturity, so I'm hoping it will just continue like this, so that way it won't need all too much pole anytime soon. But going forward, I can now just do normal chop and extend, or like actually first just an extension, and then eventually I can move on to normal chop and extend. But I love this modular approach to the poles, right? I can chop them up. I've done this process before, chop and stitch, or moss pole stitch up, or I can't remember what I decided on calling it, to be honest. But you know, where I take a smaller moss pole and I chuck it into the larger moss pole and then fill in the gaps. I love that these moss poles, because they're just made out of a plastic backing and a grid, are super modular. I can just take the grid off the plastic backing. I can put two poles on top of each other, next to each other, into each other, right? We're super modular. You're not going to get that if you get one of these 3D printed poles out of like hard plastic and so on. Those poles are great for growing them vertically once, but that's it. The functionality really stops there. So I love this modular approach. I can get creative and really just use them in the way that works for my plants. So 10 out of 10 for those. And of course this all would work with a non-plastic backed pole as well, but because I'm growing it outdoors, I appreciate the extra water retention of the plastic backing and how the plastic backing funnels the roots into the pot. Also going to connect the mesh at the bottom over here a little bit in at least 2 or 3 spots. I just had a realization. It was a little silly of me to top the bottom up with a little bit of moss, because I've actually wanted to change the medium for this plant around as well. So, oh well, we're still changing the medium around. Alright, let me explain why. I don't have that much moss. These thick moss poles or these thick row verticals take a lot of substrate, and I just don't have enough moss, and I have a bit of repotting to do. But I have lots and lots of aeroid mix. I just went ahead and bought everything in bulk again, heaps of pumice, heaps of tree fern fiber, heaps of bark, heaps of perlite and so on. So I have plenty of that. And this plant is outside. Hang on, let me actually fill it with aeroid mix while I talk to you about it, so we can multitask a little bit. Indoors, by far, my preferred medium for the vertical extent for the pole is moss. No doubt in my mind. For a few reasons. It actually has really, really good water retention, even though a lot of people complain about it drying out quickly. If you think moss dries out quickly, imagine bark in the pole, right? Secondly, it's very clean, right? Sometimes, like right at the beginning, after you first set it up, it starts shedding a little bit of moss, but within a couple of weeks, it usually settles in and it doesn't even shed that much anymore, huh? At least compared to a substrate like this. I mean, you will see the mess on the floor later. I have a little bucket underneath to hopefully contain the mess as much as I can. But I've given up today. I need to renovate my house after this, I think. So yeah, it's quite clean when it comes to the shedding aspect. And watering is very clean. I can pop my water bottle upside down. The moss is neatly going to absorb the water and slowly drip through the pole via the moss. If I have a substrate like my aeroid mix that has much more aeration, much more gaps, that's the gaps that the water is going to run through, and it's just going to make a mess. So I don't like using aeroid mixes when growing on poles indoors, but outdoors it's perfectly fine, because the biggest disadvantage of moss is it becomes hydrophobic when dry, and then it takes a little while to re-moisten it, and that's when you see a lot of water pearl off. Now inside I don't ever let my moss dry out, but outside, because it is much warmer, it just happens every now and then, right? Alrighty, I'm done with this. You can see it from the back, the moss, and then the new aeroid mix over here. So it should make the re-moistening of the pole much easier when growing outside. I can just hose it down and it should just moisten it straight away, instead of just pearling off when I spray a super dry moss pole, right? It takes a couple of minutes to re-moisten it. Let me get rid of the mess over here. I need to put the plastic backing back on the third pole down there. You're overheating again, so I'll turn you off and let you cool down a little bit, and then we can come back and assess everything that happened while not being surrounded by absolute chaos. So I'll see you soon. Cleaned up a little bit. I have also decided to put that third part, so the bottom part, in my garden actually, and maybe it will find the fence. Given that there's 1,000 ants in there anyway, they probably appreciate being well and truly within the jungle. Look, that's not the priority. The priority is really making this one grow nice and lush again. I think the third growth point is completely within the pot, which isn't really ideal. I clearly did not think this through today or the other day when I prepared the chops, but that's okay. There's actually a growth point here, there's a shoot here, and then there's a shoot here, and then there's the main shoot up there as well. So have a look. Main shoot, little shoot over here, little shoot over there, and then the third shoot is actually down here. Oh, but this one's also reshooting here. But what I really want to see over the next couple of days or weeks is a move of these leaves towards the front, towards the light. The fence will be right here, so they'll actually be brushing up against the fence by now. So let's hope I'm not causing too much damage, but I'm really hoping that over time they'll move, and then that subsequent leaves thereafter will also point forward, like that second shoot at the bottom did earlier. So I'll take it outside, I'll water it thoroughly, and then I'll pop it back on my wall of aeroids, and we'll see each other maybe in a couple of weeks, maybe in a couple of months, whenever there's some updates to share. So see you soon. Here it is. It is definitely my favorite Syngonium. I can't actually believe this is a Syngonium. Now in the meantime, I have actually also learned that this is a high altitude Syngonium, which gives me a little bit more confidence in assuming that this plant can survive outdoors year-round. I'll put it right back outside on my fence where it was at the beginning of the video already, so the position for this plant hasn't changed. The only thing that changed is that with the chop it obviously went much lower and is shaded by the fence from behind. So these leaves have naturally all moved forward to give you this beautiful display side now, which is exactly what I was after. And if we're looking at the back of the pole, you can also see that there's no algae buildup over here despite it being a clear pole. That again indicates that there's just no sun exposure coming from the back. You saw that, and I didn't even notice on the day when I did the chop, I only noticed when I was editing. You saw how the extension of the old pole started going green at the top, right? Whereas the bottom was all no algae. Algae requires light first and foremost, so you really saw where the fence ends. So this one is still a bit to go before it would ever reach the top of the fence, and yeah, that is a good thing. Now it has grown, I don't know exactly how many leaves it has grown, but most importantly it has these two big shoots, right? So this is shoot number one, which is maturing quite nicely, but obviously the top shoot over here is the main star of the show. I have one odd leaf that wants to stick up, which I'm not mad about. I think over time it will slowly move to the side, but this is the newest leaf, and overall you can't really see a reduction in leaf size as on the back of the chop. If anything, I think these leaves have gotten even bigger, but that's probably also because I chopped this plant in the middle of January, which is the middle of the growing season for us over here in Australia. Sometimes even a little bit too hot, but obviously this plant didn't seem to have minded, despite the fact that it is a high altitude plant, so I would normally prefer cooler temperatures. it dealt really well with the 30 plus degrees that we've had in summer out there. So yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a candidate to stay out there year round. At this stage I have no desire to move it in because it didn't really grow that well for me inside in the first place. So I feel like moving it in is actually more likely to introduce shock than just keeping it out there. But time will tell, and I will film my garden over the course of winter to assess what plants are doing well and which ones aren't, and then potentially change something after all. In, I would say, 2 out of 3 times watering is done by Mother Nature because it rains quite a lot, and then the third watering I would do manually, and that's when I also provide nutrients. Now I definitely haven't been super on top of nutrient provision, but I don't think the plant really seems to mind. Now I actually have a new trick that I want to try, and I did not plan this, but I just came up with it. My biggest challenge when it comes to growing plants outdoors is consistent nutrient provision. Indoors, I always flip my water bottles upside down and then they just drain through, and I always put nutrients in my water bottles. Outside, with Mother Nature doing most of the watering or me just hosing them down, nutrient provision is kind of like an afterthought, and really I just do it every now and then when I can be asked to take nutrients and pour it down the pole via a watering can. So I thought it might be a good idea to try this new product that I've been sent. It's a sample of worm casting granulates, and don't worry, I think one day I will make a full video about it because I'm testing it out in a few different ways of applying it, let's say, right? But it's also really hard to really assess exactly how much impact a specific nutrient had, right? It's something that I would need to use for many years and not use anything else, and then assess if my plants are still alive in a few years, I suppose. But let's try it anyway. Maybe we'll see a difference. Anyway, so I'll take just a handful of that granulate and I just put it at the top of the pole, so that next time when I water from the top down, those granulates will slowly dissolve in the water and then provide nutrients through the pole without me having to put nutrients in the actual water. So it's basically like a slow release fertilizer, but it's an organic version just made out of worm castings instead of having the synthetic slow release fertilizers that we're all used to. So I think I will do this with most of my poles outside, because during winter I hardly do any watering myself. I just rely on rain because I really want to avoid the wet and cold combination that induces rot. So I think there's plenty of natural rain in Sydney. I don't need to water on top of that. So that way I can still provide nutrients without having to provide liquid. Pretty smart idea. I'm pretty proud of myself for doing that. Let's also quickly address the root health over here. First of all, there are some roots sticking out the pot. That is not unexpected because it is against the fence. The fence retains moisture because it's like this weird brushwood fencing is what it's called. But anyway, that retains moisture and roots are always attracted to it. So they always go into that little fence kind of. I don't mind. Is what it is. But most importantly, there's roots over here, and we remember I put an extra layer of moss in the back, so any of the roots that we see over here now, they are newly established roots, and we can already see some roots going into the aeroid mix layer as well. Only one out of the 2 cuttings has actually made it into the aeroid mix part, so this is all coming from the main shoot. But to be honest, I would have actually expected more root growth considering how nice the plant is growing from a leaf perspective. But maybe all of the root growth is happening within the pot. I mean, there was no roots within the pot and now they're already sticking out. Maybe the plant is rooting a little bit more in the pot at the moment, but because it's a black pot, I have no visibility of it. Doesn't really matter whereabouts the roots are, the end result speaks for itself. The plant is definitely happy. It has also grown this runner out of the pot. Remember how I said that a third shoot is actually hidden in the pot? So that runner obviously started, running out of the pot rather than climbing the moss pole. Now I do not want to put this runner up the pole now. It would already be reaching the top and it has grown leaves smaller than my pinky's nail. So I'm gonna cut this. What I'll do is I'll cut this here. So I keep one leaf on there, and this node I will now cable tie to the actual moss pole so that it can grow roots into the moss pole then reshoot, and hopefully the reshoot is not just running away, but actually growing with short internodal spacing, giving me nice large leaves, like the other 2 shoots that are currently on here. This cutting over here is also slowly coming off the pole a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't have any plastic chopsticks left, just wood, so this will be it. But again, I'll put the chopstick in here so that this cutting isn't going any further. Now it's not ideal because it's plastic back, so I don't have much leverage. The plant can kind of push it out a bit, but it's still going to be better than nothing. Maybe I'll go in one further. I'm just using the grit. I'm just using the grit of the actual moss pole to put the chopstick in. And now, if you look back from the back, it's no longer sticking out, so staying on the pole, because I want to make sure that these roots root into the pole, not into the air. Now there was also the bottom part that had so many ants and was kind of like I couldn't incorporate it into this, and in hindsight I think it's also a bit silly to have 3 next to each other. It would have been too wide. I have actually since done something similar where I stitched all 3 together, but that's a different video, so stay tuned for this one. But in this instance I only ended up with 2 of the poles on here, and the 3rd one ended up being in the garden. A month after I put it in the garden, this happened. Oh no, look at this. I had the bottom part of the Syngonium steyermarkii here, and the wind just... Oh, it wasn't the wind, it was this ginormous branch that crashed on it. Are you for real? Oh my god, poor thing. I'll sort it out later. Oops. Anyway, this was the bottom part of the Syngonium steyermarkii. I want this to find the fence. Oopsie. Well, I felt a bit bad watching that footage back, me just throwing that cutting over there. But I would like to inform you that the cutting is well. It has rooted and has found it into Tim's garden. So hopefully one day he's got one of these beautiful plants growing up his fence as well. Now the original one that I have in my garden has actually recovered really well, and it's growing really well as well, despite being in a somewhat shaded area. And I'm really hoping that over the course of winter and then next spring, it's also going to find the fence and grow really nice on that fence. I think that would be a really nice pop of color. It's like a light green, nice texture, nice shape. I really appreciate this plant, and it has like a really interesting, not a sheen. It's obviously not velvet, but it's also not like leathery like a deliciosa. It has like an interesting sheen to it. It's definitely turned into a bit of a standout for me, so I am very, very happy with this plant. Apart from that, I don't have all too much to share with you because, as I said, I really just popped it out there and let Mother Nature do its magic. So I don't have all too much information to share with you around this plant and growing it indoors, because I was always quite unsuccessful growing this plant indoors. My main challenge when I grew it indoors was spider mites. I feel like it's a bit of a spider mite attraction, but since I put it outside, that is a non-concern. I also have seen absolutely no negative implications of me finding ants in here. I can't see any ants crawling around in the pole now. Maybe it being see-through is less inviting for them compared to the somewhat opaque backing it had before. Maybe all of that water kind of made them run away. I'm not too sure, but at the end of the day, like, yeah, it is in my garden. There's lots of animals in my garden, so I'm not mad or surprised. It just happened. I think the only thing I could have done better is maybe do all of that repotting outside instead of inside, so that I don't bring the ants inside. But I haven't seen any in the back of it either. So I think it was just a little unpleasant surprise at the time of doing the actual chop, but I don't think there's any sort of implication for the plant's sake. Definitely seems to appreciate the high light, so that's probably a bit of a challenge when growing indoors, but you could always supplement with grow lights. So yeah, I think ultimately I haven't made enough experiences with this plant to really speak all too much about it, specifically when it comes to growing indoors. But maybe that is where you guys can come in. Have you grown this plant before? Have you seen this plant? Have you heard of it? If you are growing it, where are you growing it? Do you have success growing it indoors? Do you have any other tips to share? So as a community, we can fill in the knowledge gaps that I have due to lack of experience with this plant. Let me know how you feel about this plant. Do you like this plant? I very much enjoy it, and I'm very, very happy that it found its way into my collection. Again, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Engaging with my content is the best way for you guys to support me. I appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video.